Hey guys, my name is Doug with Infotainment.com. Today we're working on the 2023 and newer Ford Super Duty truck. That's the F-250 through the F-550. We have an exciting, awesome upgrade for you guys for this truck. It's the factory full digital premium speedometer cluster. Now, those of you who have an XL, XLT that have the small analog cluster, you can now upgrade fully plug and play using all pre-programmed Ford parts for your truck very easily. Today we're going to show you how easy that is. The kit consists of a pre-programmed plug and play speedometer cluster that's programmed to your exact VIN using your exact mileage. It also comes with a cluster module, some trim pieces, plug and play wiring, and last but not least, the OBD Gen programmer, which allows the truck to accept all of these Ford factory parts and to work like it was installed right from the factory. Today, Chris is going to show you guys on how to install all of this, show you how easy it is, so let's get started.
All right, so where we're going to start is actually this bezel that's going around your cluster and your radio. We're going to pop this free. You can just grab that top edge and pull towards you. And it's just held in with some retaining clips. We'll set that aside. The next part we're going to remove is this long center silver trim. It says SuperDuty on it. We're going to pop that free. Easiest place to pop it free or start to is on the passenger side, I find. And just working your way over to the key cylinder. All right, and the next trim is going to be this silver one at the end here around your AC vent. And this is also just held in with some retaining clips. And now, if you haven't already, you're going to pull your steering column towards you and down. And we can start removing some screws at this point. These 7mm screws going around your cluster bezel. We can get these pulled out. All right, and the next part we're going to remove is right below your key cylinder. This panel, we're just going to pop that downwards. We don't have to remove it completely, but you do have a screw underneath here that we have to remove as well. And then off to the side of that is this little panel here that also goes over your climate control housing. When you pull that back, you got a little screw back there as well. Now from this part, we can pop all these clips free that are securing it to your radio bezel. Just like that. There's one more section that's still attached, which is this vinyl trim covering your steering column, and it's attached to your cluster bezel. So basically, if you use a panel tool, you can get in between there, and it should just unsnap fairly easily. And with that free, now you're free to unclip all your connectors that are attached to your key cylinder. All right, now you can set this aside. All right, now from here, you can access the 4 screws that are holding on your instrument panel cluster. I'll go ahead and pull these out. These are slightly different from the rest of them. They're a little bit longer, but they're still a 7mm. So don't get these mixed up with any of the other ones. They may be too deep to put in another location besides the cluster. All right, with all the screws removed, we can pull our cluster free. And on the back side, you're gonna wanna unplug the cluster. And once you have the connector free, you can pop the little Christmas tree type clip and your cluster is free. We can set that aside. All right, so before we go ahead and install the full digital cluster into the cluster housing, what we do need to install is the cluster module. Now this installs right behind your screen area. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this center section out, get this mounted, install our plug and play wiring, then we can move forward with the cluster install. So in order to get this out, we're gonna have to pull our little Cubby's rubber mat out of there. That'll expose 2 7mm up top. We'll pull out these 7mm and all the rest that are exposed down here as well. All right, with all that free, we can take our top pocket, pop it upwards. We'll unplug this. And before we start yanking on our screen, we have 2 more 7mm screws that are hidden. They're straight down right behind your screen. Let me pull those out. This is where having a magnetic tip or just a magnet will be your friend. There's one. These are silver also, so they're different from the rest of them. All right, we got those removed. I'm gonna go ahead and pull back on our climate control bezel. We don't have to completely remove it. We're just trying to unclip it. And now we have enough room to pull our screen out of the way. We'll get this unplugged. There we go. All right, now back here, I'm just gonna tuck the wiring for the screen up here. You'll see you have 4 7mm screws that are pre-installed here. That's where our module is going to go. So let's pull those screws out. And with those screws removed, you can see our module lines up and fits right like that. So we'll grab our wiring right here, and one end will plug into our module. And the other end actually goes to our cluster wiring. Pop that free. And I'm going to route this over to where our module is going to be installed. And this end will route back to where our cluster is going to go. Then we have one more harness that we have to connect to our module. It's going to run to our screen. Pink end goes towards your cluster, so we'll route that over. And the purple end will go into the cluster module. All right, now we're ready to reinstall this module here. And we can throw those screws back in. All right, with that installed, we're ready to put our screen back in, and basically it's just reversing all those steps to get our center console back together. All right, now we come to the part where we're gonna have to modify our new digital cluster bezel. If you have a key cylinder type key and your new bezel, you can see there is no accommodations for these screws to mount. So what we're gonna have to do is modify this portion of the new bezel that you received. Now, if you received the bezel that is pre-cut, you can disregard this portion of the video. Also, if you received a bezel that already has the screw mounts there, also disregard. This is just for people that receive this digital bezel with this in place. So if this is missing, just disregard this step. You're gonna be receiving a key cylinder mount that will go in place of this one. And as you can see, when you line it up here, you're gonna see just how much that you need to chop off from your current bezel or the new bezel that you're gonna put in there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start by pulling the key cylinder off of your old bezel. This is mounted with 3 T25 Torx screws. we'll pull that out and we can set aside our old bezel. We won't need that anymore. And for the new bezel, what I'm gonna do to stay really precise is I'm gonna use a little torch lighter to kind of heat that plastic up, and an X-Acto knife, and I'm just gonna cut that out. You could also use a little mini hacksaw and chop away at that. You can use a Dremel, but whatever you do, you're just gonna wanna stay with that shape. You're gonna wanna kind of follow that contour. You don't have to be exacting. After the cut is done, when you put everything in there, you'll see if it's giving you a little bit of trouble. You can just come back with a little file and clean off any shavings that you may need to. I'm gonna start at this edge here. I'm gonna go straight down, basically in the crease of these two plastic joints here. All right, and that's kind of the end result that you want there. You can go ahead and clean these up. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're not going to see any of this stuff. It's just to give you enough room to have your new key cylinder in place. All right, that looks good. Now we can go back into the truck and continue with our install. And actually, one last thing before we jump in the truck is I'm going to mount our previously removed key cylinder on that new piece that we received. We're going to use the old screws that it came with, and this will only go in one way, so you cannot get this wrong. All right, we're back in the truck. The first thing that I'm going to reinstall is our key cylinder. We'll line up those holes down there and throw a couple screws in there. All right, and now we can install our cluster. And when you go to plug in your cluster, you'll notice on the harness that we ran up here, you have two sets of plugs. These are both different also. It'll only go in one way, so you can't get it wrong. We'll just make sure that we have both of these plugged in, and then we can mount this up. There we go. Right, and if you remember, we had the longer screws that were holding the cluster in. All right, cluster's installed and mounted. We're ready for our bezel. All right, now we are ready to start reinstalling the last pieces of our dash here. I'm gonna snap these panels back together like they were, and we'll get the key cylinder bezel snapped in. And we can do our new radio and cluster bezel. The last piece is our AC vent bezel. And one more piece, I forgot, we didn't clip down our vinyl steering column piece here, and that'll just snap into place. All right, and there we go. Now we got our interior all put back together. We are ready to run our Genie programmer. We're going to turn the ignition into the on position and plug in our programmer, and we're going to wait to get a green light from our programmer, and that indicates that everything took, and we'll test out our screen. All right, we got a green light, so we're clear to pull this from the vehicle. Even though the vehicle has been programmed, we will save this, stick it in the glove box, just in case for whatever reason we lose programming, we have the ability to reprogram it.
All right, guys, as you can see here in the main menu, you have the My View. You'll be able to come in here and scroll through all of the different things that you want in the Configure My View section. You have your trip and fuel, also your fuel economy, your gauges, off-road, towing. If you do have the GPS navigation system, you will get turn-by-turn directions in this digital cluster. It gives you a really great tech feel in the vehicle, especially when you upgrade to the 12-inch screen, and then you have the full digital speedometer cluster. All factory parts, guys, all plug and play right here by infotainment.com. All right, guys, as you can see, such an easy to add upgrade here from infotainment.com. Fully plug and play using all factory Ford OEM parts. Be sure to stop by our website, infotainment.com, to check out all the different cool things you can do to your 2023 and up Super Duty truck. Thanks for watching.